Why your mind never shuts down anymore. Have you noticed how your brain is always on? Like, literally always running. You wake up and the first thing you do is grab your phone. News, messages, emails, that work group chat that never stops. And before you even brush your teeth, you've consumed more information than your grandparents processed in an entire week. And you know what's truly insane about all this? We think this is normal, that this is just how life works now. But what if I told you this information addiction is literally destroying your mental peace? Listen, there's a virus running wild in your head right now. And no, this isn't some motivational coach metaphor. It's a real mental pattern infecting billions of people. The belief that you need to know everything, understand everything, stay on top of everything. This compulsive need for information has become the most addictive drug of the 21st century. And the worst part, nobody talks about it because everyone's too busy consuming the next post, the next video, the next controversy. The brutal truth is this: your anxiety doesn't come from the chaotic world out there. It comes from your desperate attempt to control that chaos through knowledge. You believe that if you know more, if you understand better, if you follow every news story, every trend, every social media drama, you'll be safe, protected, in control. But the exact opposite happens. The more you try to know, the more your mind spirals into panic. A study from the University of California found that the modern human brain processes about 34 gigabytes of information per day. 34 gigabytes. That's equivalent to reading 174 newspapers daily. Your brain didn't evolve for this. It was designed to survive on the savannah, not to process an infinite Instagram timeline while answering emails and listening to a productivity podcast. And then you wonder why you're always exhausted, why you can't focus, why you feel that constant dread, that tightness in your chest that won't go away. The answer is simple. You're trying to do the impossible. You're trying to be omniscient. And that's not ambition. That's self-destruction. Because look, the problem isn't information itself. The problem is the illusion. The illusion that knowing more will give you more control. That understanding everything will make you more secure. That staying constantly updated will put you ahead. But in reality, it just puts you in an infinite loop of anxiety. A vicious cycle where every answer generates 10 new questions. Every solution reveals 5 new problems. And the cruelest part is that we've been trained for this. Since childhood, they told you knowledge is power, that ignorance is shameful, that you need to study, learn, constantly update yourself. And look, I'm not saying learning is bad, but there's a huge difference between seeking knowledge with purpose and compulsively consuming information because you're afraid of missing out. Think about it. How many times today did you check your phone for no real reason? How many browser tabs do you have open right now? How many articles did you save to read later and never came back to? This isn't healthy curiosity. This is desperation disguised as productivity. Drop a comment. How many unread notifications do you have on your phone right now? If you vibed with this, hit that like button and subscribe. How your brain became hostage to the next piece of information. Now comes the part nobody wants to admit. You're not seeking information. You're running from emptiness. Because when you stop, when it gets quiet, when there's nothing to consume, process, or understand, what happens? That discomfort, that unease, that weird feeling that you should be doing something. And that's exactly where the virus operates. Your brain has been hijacked by the dopamine cycle. Every notification, every new piece of information, every insignificant discovery triggers a small dopamine hit. And your brain loves it. It learns fast that information equals reward. So it starts asking for more, and you obey. You grab your phone, refresh the feed, check the messages, open another tab, and for a few seconds, you feel that relief, that sensation of being in control. But it's an illusion. Because here's what's really happening. You're outsourcing your mental peace to external sources. You've conditioned your brain to believe that tranquility comes from being informed, from being updated, from knowing what's going on. But this is a perfect trap. Because the world never stops. There's always something new, always a story, always drama, always something you supposedly need to know. And then you become a slave to the next click, the next post, the next update. You're no longer in charge. You're reacting. You wake up, and before thinking about your life, about your goals, about what truly matters, you're already consuming what others want you to consume. Your first interactions of the day aren't with yourself. They're with algorithms programmed to capture your attention. A Harvard University study revealed that the average person picks up their phone 152 times per day. 152 times. That's one check every 6 minutes during waking hours. And most of these checks, they have no real purpose. It's pure impulse. It's the brain asking for its fix. It's the virus feeding itself. And you know what's most disturbing? You start confusing motion with progress. You're always busy, always consuming, always learning something new. But honest question, are you actually growing? Or are you just accumulating information you'll forget in 2 days? Are you building something meaningful? Or are you just too distracted to notice you're going nowhere? Because, see, the problem isn't being informed. The problem is thinking. You need to be informed about everything. About international politics. About the controversy of the week. About the new TikTok trend. About what so-and-so said about whatchisnum. About conspiracy theories. About productivity hacks. About news that won't change absolutely anything in your actual life. And every time you consume something without purpose, you're stealing energy from your own existence. You're using mental capacity that could be creating, building, genuinely connecting, to process informational garbage. And at the end of the day, you're exhausted. But not that satisfying tired from doing something important. It's that empty tired from spending the entire day running on a treadmill. The reality is, you don't need to know everything. You need to know what matters to you. And that's radically different. Because when you free your mind from the obligation to always be updated, something magical happens. You finally have space to think, to feel, to exist without this constant pressure to perform knowledge. Leave an honest comment. Can you go 1 hour without checking your phone? Hit like if this resonated. Why? Accepting that you don't know is the path to freedom. Here's the secret that will change everything. Mental sanity doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from accepting that you don't need to know. And this isn't giving up. It's not settling. It's liberation. Because when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable through knowledge, you finally open space to truly live. Think about the irony. You spend your entire life accumulating information to feel secure. But it's precisely this accumulation that's making you insecure. Every new piece of information brings 10 new uncertainties. Every answer reveals 100 new questions. And you're trapped in this infinite maze, thinking the exit is around the next corner, in the next article, in the next video. But it's not. The exit is in stopping the search. Because look what happens when you admit, I don't know. And that's okay. First, you feel absurd relief. Like, physically and emotionally. Your body relaxes. Your mind slows down. That constant tension in your shoulders, that background anxiety, that weight on your chest, all of it decreases because you're no longer carrying the impossible weight of having to understand the entire universe. And second, you get your time back. Think about how many hours per day you spend consuming information that won't change anything in your life. How many minutes scrolling feeds? How many hours watching news about things you can't control? How many days reading random opinions from random people about random topics? All that time could be invested in things that actually matter to you. A University of Michigan study discovered that people who practice conscious acceptance of uncertainty show significantly lower levels of generalized anxiety. It's not about pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing you don't need to have a formed opinion about everything, that you don't need to understand every nuance of every situation, that you can simply exist without this pressure to be a universal expert. And look, this goes against everything they taught you. We live in a culture that glorifies knowing, that punishes ignorance, that makes you feel inadequate if you're not in the loop. But this is the biggest trap, because the more you try to be in the loop about everything, the more you get out of touch with yourself. You lose contact with what you truly want, feel, need. You become a walking external hard drive, full of useless data and empty of purpose. The subversive truth is this. You don't need more information. You need more discernment. You need to learn to filter what enters your mind with the same care you filter what enters your body. Because just like you don't eat anything just because it's available, you shouldn't consume any information just because it's there. So start doing differently. When you feel that impulse to check your phone for no reason, stop. Breathe. Ask, do I really need to know this right now? Will this change anything in my life? If the answer is no, let it pass. When that sensationalist news appears, that heated debate, that controversy of the moment, ask, do I have emotional energy to process this? Is it worth it? If it's not worth it, ignore it without guilt. Because at the end of the day, your mental peace is worth more than being right, worth more than being updated, worth more than winning that online argument. And when you understand this, when you truly internalize it, something shifts. You stop living in reactive mode and return to creative mode. You stop being driven by fear of missing out and return to being driven by what truly inspires you. Comment. What information will you stop consuming starting today? Drop that like if you want this freedom. How to reprogram your mind for real sanity. Now comes the practical part, the real transformation. Because understanding the problem is the first step, but changing the pattern is what will actually set you free. And look, this isn't about becoming a digital hermit or pretending the world doesn't exist. It's about creating conscious boundaries between you and the infinite flow of information that wants to suck your attention 24/7. First move, define your zones of intentional ignorance. Yes, you read that right. Actively choose what you're going to be ignorant about. Politics from another country? Intentional ignorance. Celebrity drama? Intentional ignorance. Sensationalist news that doesn't affect your life? Intentional ignorance. And when someone comes at you with that tone of, did you see what happened? Take a deep breath and say, didn't, and I'm at peace with that. Because you are. You're at peace because you decided to protect your mental energy. Second move, create information windows. Instead of being available all the time for any notification, any update, any message, establish specific times. Like, 2 or 3 times a day you check your essential sources. And truly essential, not that meme group, not that gossip account, not that news portal that only makes you anxious. Essential is what directly impacts your life, your work, your real relationships. Third move, replace consumption with creation. Every time you feel that impulse to consume information without purpose, redirect that energy to create something. Write 3 sentences about how you're feeling. Draw anything. Organize a corner of your home. Do 5 minutes of stretching. Any action that's yours, that comes from inside out, instead of outside in. Because creating reconnects you with yourself. Consuming disconnects you. And look, at first, it's going to feel weird. Your brain will go through withdrawal. It'll ask for the fix. It'll generate that anxiety, that discomfort of not knowing what's happening. But stay strong. Because this discomfort is temporary. It's the virus trying to survive. And when you resist, when you choose silence over noise, clarity over confusion, something extraordinary happens. You start hearing your own thoughts again. You rediscover what you actually think, feel, want. Not what algorithms want you to want. Not what the masses are debating. Not what's trending. But what pulses inside you when all the external noise finally quiets down. And then you realize you were looking for answers out there, for questions that only exist in here. You were trying to fill an internal void with external data. But it doesn't work like that. It never worked. The peace you're seeking isn't in the next piece of information. It's in your capacity to exist without needing it. So take a deep breath and make a radical choice. Choose sanity. Choose to protect your mind. Choose to be selective about what you let in. Because your attention is the most valuable resource you have. And every time you give it away for free to anything that blinks on the screen, you're robbing yourself. You're trading your real life for an illusion of control. The final truth is this: you'll never know everything. And thank God for that. Because if you knew everything, if you understood everything, if you controlled everything, you wouldn't be human. You'd be a machine. And machines don't feel peace, don't feel joy, don't feel that deep relief of simply being, without having to prove anything, without having to know anything, without having to always be one step ahead. So free your mind from this prison. Stop trying to be omniscient. Accept your limited and beautiful humanity, and discover that real sanity was always here, waiting for you to stop searching. Comment what your first step will be to free yourself from this virus. Drop your like, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's deprogram together.